Dels ni som sitter här givetvis, men också de som tittar på livesändningen. Vi har nämligen börjat livesända det här. Så ni är hjärtligt välkomna, även ni som sitter hemma i vardagsrum eller kontor eller var ni nu sitter. Det här är System Center Day, så att jag hoppas att ni har kommit rätt. Ingen som reser sig upp i alla fall. Bra. Det här är den sista delen i en serie av 3 summits som vi har kört. Därför att när vi började planera för det här så diskuterade vi lite grann innehåll givetvis och insåg att det här var ganska mycket. Det här får vi inte plats med på en dag. Därför drog vi ut det till 3 dagar, lite utspridda då, så man inte skulle behöva vara borta från jobbet 3 dagar i sträck. Även om det kanske är skönt emellanåt. Det vi ska börja med alldeles strax här nu är ju Kent Agerlund, han som är först ut från Cortec. Jag vågar nästan säga världskänd, world renowned. Han rycker på axlarna, han är blygsam. Hur som helst, jag hoppas att ni kommer att få en fantastiskt spännande, inspirerande dag. Det kommer att vara otroligt mycket information, mycket matnyttigt, mycket demos som är karaktäriserande för våra event, givetvis. Glöm inte bort att utvärdera. Ni har ju fått er biljett, så att då vet ni om att ni har ju en hel applikation där med agenda och utvärdering och så vidare. Så den sköts i mobilen. Nu ska jag sluta prata och släppa fram Kent här. Så att vi kör väl en liten film kanske. Kan vara bra. Lite intro, så sparkar vi igång dagen.
It is on. Good morning. As you can hear, I'll be doing this session in English, although for the last 12 months I have seriously thought about immigrating to Sweden. You beat us in ice hockey. That wasn't a big surprise. You beat us in football. That was a huge surprise. And you not only did it once, you did it twice last year. So next time I'm here, I'm going to apply for a visa, I guess. Who am I? My name is Kent. I still live in Copenhagen, but might be moving to Stockholm, all depending on how this goes. I've been working with System Center and Configuration Manager for about 20 years. Been working at Cortec, a System Center house and an Azure house for about 16 years. That means I'm pretty old. Doesn't mean that I know everything there is to know about System Center, because it constantly changes. I just had a chat before the session here with Mr. Arwidmark, and saying, well, I thought when we were moving, to current branch, and this would be the last version of SCCM, that everything would settle down and be super easy, no new changes. But it has been quite the opposite. Every single month since October, we have got a new release of SCCM. So when the marketing team at Microsoft says, well, this is the final release, that's the biggest lie ever. They're just saying, well, the name is not going to change, but there are a ton of new releases all the time. I have my Twitter up here, and as per usual, if you're not on Twitter, you should seriously consider that. Follow guys like some of the fellow speakers up here, not because they are the smartest guys in the world, well, some of them are, some of not, but because they follow some of the smartest guys in the world. And especially these days with the fast cadence, you know, you can sit there and test a new feature for hours and hours and hours until you realize, hey, the feature is actually broken. It won't be fixed until the next hot fix or the next technical preview. Trust me, it's a lot like that these days. I kind of like sessions to be interactive. So those of you here in the room, if you have any questions, just stop me. And those sitting at home or at work watching the stream, you can ask the questions on Twitter, and I'll do my best after my presentation here to go in and answer those questions. So my session is about the top 6 config manager features in current branch. I have no idea why it was top 6. I think I was given the session title, but I'm quite happy with that. First off, it is not called Configuration Manager 2016, period. It's called Configuration Manager Current Branch. And those of you who have been working with Windows 10, you know Windows 10 is the last Windows version until someone else comes up with a better plan. And it's kind of the same here with SCCM. So what is a branch and why do they do this? At Microsoft, those of you who have been working with SCCM 2007 and Config Manager SCCM 2012, you know that you have an SCCM installation, you can go to a customer and you can ask them about the version, and they have no idea. It might be 2012 Service Pack 1, it might be 2012 Service Pack 1 and 500 hotfixes. They absolutely don't know that. So the end experience when we start troubleshooting stuff and start testing stuff in SCCM is different. One installation might experiencing no issues, while another one might have a ton of issues that you have never seen before. And that's what we are trying to avoid here by moving into a current branch scenario. So you will get updates, major releases. Right now we are just on the 2nd major release, the one called 1602. But you can expect, and now I'm just guessing, you can expect at least 1, maybe 2 new major releases this year. So at the end of this year, we are looking back at 3 major releases. So the deployment is very rapid. Changes are coming all the time. And why are changes coming all the time? Well, mainly for SCCM, it's because we want to support Windows 10 current branch and current branch for business. And those of you who have been working with Windows 10, you know Windows 10 is also on the 2nd release. So currently we are working with Windows 10 15.11. There is a new version coming out. There's always a new version coming out. But the version codenamed Redstone will have a lot of security features added to the build, like improvements to enterprise data protection. There will be Windows Defender ATP. And in order for you to manage that, you need to be on SCCM current branch, period. You can still manage your Windows 10 with SCCM 2012. So you can still, deploy Windows 10. You can still install an agent, but you will not be able to manage all of the new security features. And don't expect Microsoft to go in and add any additional Windows 10 support to SCCM 2012. They're not going to do that. So you want to get on current branch as quickly as possible. I said that the version number right now, the current build is called 1602. And there is really no tricky thing to the version numbering here. So it will just be the month, and it will be the year and the month. It's not the year and the month where you will get the build. It's the year and the month when Microsoft internally finished the build. So the next build might be called, let's say, 1606. We might not get it until July or August, something like that. How do you get to current branch? Well, you have a couple of options. You can migrate. So if you're today sitting with SCCM 2007 or SCCM 2012, you can definitely migrate. You wanna get to the latest build, which is called 1602. You cannot do that. Not straight, not directly. You need to go to a baseline build first. At this point, there is only one baseline build, and that build is called 1511. So when you schedule your migration, you will go to 1511, and as soon as you have installed 1511, normally within 5-10 minutes in the console, it will give you an opportunity to upgrade to 1602. So you will actually have to go through the entire process again of upgrading your environment. You can also do an upgrade. So if you have SCCM 2012 running, any service pack, and all of you who have SCCM 2012 running, you have at least one service pack, because the first service pack came out like 5 years ago. So if you're not running on that, that's wow. Again, you will have to go to the baseline, and then you can upgrade to 1602. But now you can do an in-place upgrade. The in-place upgrade works. That's the interesting part. If you have a site server operating system on 2008 R2, you can also upgrade that at the same time. So not at the same time, you probably want to finish your SCCM upgrade first and then upgrade your operating system. But it's supported and it also works. I've done that a couple of times. There are a few things that you need to be aware about. If you have any custom web services running that are non-SCCM native web services, then you probably want to uninstall them first and then reinstall them after. But besides that, it's working pretty well. If you're on SMS 2003, you should get a new job. It's going to be hard because there's not that many organizations out there requiring 2003 skills. So it is really, game over. Well, it's a joke. There'll still be people needing you. But there is absolutely no migration plans, right? So getting to current branch is kind of easy. And as long as you have a 64-bit SCCM environment, you can just do your in-place upgrade. I'm going to jump into a couple of demos here. So my top 6 list, the first one would be the software updates. And some of the changes you will see in here is first and foremost the cleanup process. So there is a checkbox, super simple to enable. You don't need any skills to do that, but the impact is massive. So what it will do is every 30 days, once you have done a successful synchronization, it's going to clean up your expired updates. If you're not doing that today, you might experience that your WSOS catalog is just growing and growing and growing. And at one point, some of your clients might run out of memory when trying to read and download that catalog. And I see some of you are nodding your heads, so you have been in that scenario. We can also create multiple deployments. So those of you who are familiar, again, with SCCM 2012, you have something called the automatic deployment rule. It's kind of a nice engine. The engine will will automate most of your work. So it will create every single month. It will create all of your Patch Tuesday deployments, but updates. It will download them and make them ready, but it will only create one deployment. Now in 1602, the latest build, we can create multiple deployments. So without really integrating any third-party solutions, you can get your Patch Tuesday work down to just a couple of minutes, which is kind of neat. We have a new concept called server groups. This concept was previously known as cluster-aware updates. So I can go into a collection, and then in that collection I can say, well, treat all the devices in this collection as one logical group. And when you patch the devices, do it in this specific order. And by the way, I will only allow 20% of my devices to be patched and rebooted at the same time. If something happens, you can have a script, and it will stop the other devices from being patched, and then you need to go in and fix the issue, and then you can resume your patch process there. We also have a dashboard. The dashboard is not yet available, but it will be available in what is called the technical preview. So just like you have the Windows 10 insider builds and your Windows 10 current branch and current branch for business, we also have an SCCM insider build. It's just called a technical preview. I highly encourage you to have that running, not in production. There are way too many limitations. But you should have it running because that one is being updated once per month. So a lot of new features coming in there. We have a new task sequence variable. Some of us, when we have been deploying, especially Windows 7, we have seen some timeouts when we have been deploying updates if the reference image is not really up to date. It should be up to date, but sometimes it's not. So now we can go in and control that timeout value there. Let me just show you a few things here. So I'm running on technical preview. Running in technical preview, you can see that very, very easy because right here I have a what's new. So every single time they update the technical preview, the first thing you should do is simply go to the what's new section, and then in here you can read through and they will explain what they have changed. Sometimes, and this is a new Microsoft, sometimes they even add in a video. And those videos are pretty good. So those would be a developer, program manager, just in 5 minutes or 3 minutes explaining what this feature is all about. So we don't have to go to TechNet, and search and read and the documents are not updated. We just go in here. You'll also see that you can go through all of the scenarios and then you'll get a score up here. So when you look at some of the steps, they will say 0 out of 2 scenarios completed, and that's just me being super lazy. I haven't really tested this. So let's get to my software update changes here. So the first one I mentioned was the cleanup. And the cleanup is fairly easy. You just go in and configure your site components, and you have your software update point. So your software update points, when you look at your superseding rules, you'll have run the WSOS cleanup wizard. It will run the wizard just like you're doing it today manually, or maybe you're using PowerShell. So you'll see an event in the event manager on your WSOS server, and it will only remove the expired updates. It will also remove the expired updates from your distribution points. It will remove the expired updates from your source folder. So it will do a complete cleanup, which is kind of nice. I do from time to time get the question, so when this one here is running, shouldn't we worry about, custom cleanup actions? And I would say you should still do that. So I'm using a community tool here, and this community tool, actually written by one of your fellow countrymen, will allow me to go in and say, hey, I also want to clean up my expired updates, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. So the cleanup wizard is not enough. You still need to use your own methods as well. Then I mentioned the server groups, and if I go into let's take a collection here where I have a couple of members. So if I go into my software updates, it doesn't have to be servers or anything like that. But when I go to properties here, you can see it says, well, all the devices here are part of the same server group. So this is what they used to call cluster-aware patching. And those of you who are working in 1602, you see it as cluster-aware patching. And when you click on your settings, you only see kind of half of this being available. But here I can go in and say, well, patch them in this sequence here. And by the way, only allow a certain number of clients or % to be patched at the same time. You can also add a script. So what will happen before we start rebooting the machines? What should happen after we have rebooted the machine? So you can kind of control it. It doesn't give you the same control as you have with, Orchestrator, but it's a really good beginning. If something happens, then you should get some kind of alert, but it will actually add in what is called a server group deployment lock. So it will prevent server number 5, 6, and 7 from being patched. And in here I can go in, fix the issue, and then I can clear the deployment lock, and then we'll carry on from there on. So that is pretty neat. If I go down here to monitoring, you'll see something that is super awesome, and that is the software update dashboard. So Microsoft has realized visualizing is super important. All of you doing a super great job, we all know that, but your boss doesn't know that. With the dashboard here, we can finally tell her that we are doing a great job. And if we're not doing a great job, then just don't tell her about the dashboard. But in here I can see how many devices are currently compliant, how many devices are missing, critical updates, security updates, and so on and so forth. And I can also go down here and see the updates that I have in here, so I can see how many devices are missing this specific article. Look at this dashboard as being, like version 1 of the dashboard, because there is a ton of questions we want to ask ourselves and a ton of answers we want to find when we see a dashboard like this. We also want to be able to control the dashboard, and right now we can't do that, but what we have in here is super neat. Another thing that has made it into 1602 and 1511 is content handling. Content handling has been the biggest issue for SCCM since the dawn of time. And what I mean by that is getting content from a central location to all of your clients. Because all of your clients might be internet-based clients, they might be clients, in a remote location, the bandwidth is not good, and so on and so forth. So this is really a big challenge. What they have done right now is they have introduced something called WinPE Peer Cache. And again, look at this as being feature version 1. With Windows PE Peer Cache, I can go in and say, when you boot up, when I install my Windows 10 machine in this remote location, instead of going to the distribution point to get the content, just go to one of your fellow workstations that you have there. If those workstations are configured as being WinPE hosts, they will gladly share their content. So you will just be doing a broadcast and say, hey, I need this package, this version of the package. Do any of you have that? And your fellow workstations in the same subnet, they will say, well, I have this content, I have this package, and I'll just start downloading from there on. When you do that, right now it will only work when you're booting up in Windows PE, meaning when you're doing your OS deployment. There are a ton of other scenarios. For instance, you want to upgrade to Office 2016 on your existing machines. And WinPE Peer Cache will not help you there. So for those scenarios, you need to look into branch cache. And I'm pretty sure not that many of you are using branch cache today. That's typically what I see. There are a ton of good reasons for you not to do that. But just know that in the future, a lot of you will be turning towards branch cache because a lot of changes will come, and also you have to. When we start upgrading our Windows 10 machines, those upgrades right now are 3 gigabytes. So if you have just 200 remote machines, at least once or twice a year, you have to send 3 gigabytes times 200 to all of those machines. So that's a ton of content that you need to worry about. When I'm a Windows PE Peer Cache host, there is also a couple of other things I have to worry about, and that is my client cache. Because today, those of you who are working with SCCM, you know that the default client cache size is 5 gigabytes. And if you're downloading an image, that image might be 6 or 7 gigabytes in size, all depending on what you have done. Plus you have some additional packages. So cache management becomes a bit more important here. Let me just move in here and show you how this works. So again, this is, I'm in technical preview 1605, but it already works in 1602, so it actually works in production. A couple of things you need to do. First, you need to specify, so who is going to be the host? You're going to have multiple hosts. It can be all of your workstations. So if you know that all of my workstations, they're always on, so they can all happily share their content, you can just go in and modify the default client settings. Just be aware that that also goes into your servers, and you probably don't want that. So what we normally want to do is normally want to create a custom client setting. So I'm creating a setting in here. And then you'll notice that I have something called client cache settings. When I take a look at my client cache settings, you can see, and this is for technical preview only, I can enable branch cache. I can go in here and say, well, I want to manage your default cache size. When I'm managing configuring your default cache size here, I can specify the value. I can also make you a WinPE host. So if I go in and say, well, I want to enable you to share your content when you are in a full OS, that will turn you into a Windows PE host. Setting up the cache size here can be kind of a challenge. It will still go in and take a look at your disk, so you can say, well, only if you have at least 15 or 20% of available free disk space. But it's not like it's going to change it. So you might want to have a more dynamic solution where you run, for instance, a configuration item. You can do that today, and then every week you just measure the disk space, and then you can configure the cache size depending on that. So this is literally the only thing I have to do from a from my server here, almost. That's what I've done for my workstations. So I have my workstations deployment, and I have a collection down here called all Windows PE peer cache hosts. When I did this on my client, and I have a few of those, if I look at my client here, on my client here, so on your client, whatever you do, don't turn it off. Thank you. Let's just get this one into full screen. So what I can see here is that, hey, I'm now a branch cache host or WinPE peer host. So I have these packages available, and if I scroll down in the log file, you'll see a list of all the packages. So if anyone wants these packages here, just come and grab them. So I've already pre-staged the packages on this host. Pre-staging the packages can be done, by the install or download software step in a task sequence. I can show you that in a few seconds. But nevertheless, this guy here has all of the content that it needs in the SCCM cache. So if I look in my SCCM cache here, you'll see this is content that here you have my image. And under normal circumstances, you would not download the image to your SCCM cache. You would download it during your TS build, and then it will be removed after that. If I look at my client, I have one here, a client that I started. Then you can see, just go in here. There you go. So this one here is booted up. It's in the middle of doing the OSD. So you can see here that it's actually saying, hey, I'm going to use the Win 1001 So I'm going to use that one as my distribution point. This is called a super peer. So we'll just go ahead, log on to that client, and then it will start downloading the content. And whatever you do, don't shut down that client. That's a bad idea. They're working on a fix for that, because if you shut down the host, it's not like it's going to fall over to the next host like immediately. It will wait a couple of hours, and we don't really want that. So whatever you do, when you configure your WinPE host, make sure that they are actually up and running most of the time. Just one more thing I would love to show you here, if I go back in here. So when I go to my my software library, I told you that I can have a task sequence that will pre-cache the content, and that's the task sequence I have right here. So I just for this task sequence here, I selected the download package content step, and then this is the content I have in my Windows 10 image. So I can pre-cache that. I would normally do that, weeks in advance. There are a few limitations. One, it doesn't allow me to select an application. That's a bummer. Two, I can't add in any software updates. That's another thing. Could be kind of nice if we could somehow do that. So for now, it's only packages. But it would be, driver packages, traditional packages, WIM files. So in my example here, it's almost 4.5 gigabytes. So it's still a lot of bandwidth that I save. There is one trick that you need, and that is to make sure it goes into the config manager client cache. So by default, it will go into the task sequence working directory, but that one will be wiped out after your task sequence is done. So that's a bad idea. It won't really help you. Yeah. So content handling, super nice feature, especially only if you have remote locations, because if you just have one location, you couldn't care less. But I know some of you have multiple locations. Then we have Windows 10 servicing. And Windows 10 servicing is really the #1 reason for going to SCCM current branch. Or at least it was in the beginning when they introduced SCCM current branch. Because with Windows 10 servicing, what we mean is keeping your Windows 10 up to date. And not with hotfixes, but with the major upgrades that we'll see. So keeping it up to date with version 15.11 and Redstone and the future Windows versions there. To do that, we have something called a servicing plan. That's a brand new feature in here. And I have one comment to that one. Nice try. Don't do it. I've said a few times that this is version 1.0. This is not even version 1, in my opinion. It's working when you set it up and you test it, and I will show you. Then you'll realize, hey, this is actually working. But then when you start to get serious and you go into production, then you go like, holy cow, it's not really working in my environment. And that's correct. It's not working for real in any of the environments yet. And I'll show you why it's not working. So how do I upgrade my Windows 10 machines? I'm pretty sure Johan and Mike, they're doing an OS deployment session right after mine, that they are going to tell you about the in-place upgrade task sequences, and that is how you are going to do this, even though you have SCCM current branch. So let me tell you why and what the servicing plans is all about, because they will fix the servicing plans. It will work at one point, hopefully. So let me go into production. So when I go, and this is 1602, when I go into my 1602 environment, you'll see I have something here called Windows 10 servicing, and the dashboard here is really good. It tells me, so how many versions do you have running what is called the current branch for business, Windows 10, and that is currently 15.11. So I have the majority of my machines in this environment here running that. How many do you have still left on 1507? And by the way, those still left on 1507, which is 31% in my environment, they will expire soon. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that, July 1st they cannot log on. That would be fun, though. I'm pretty sure we can fix that somehow. But that's not what they mean when they say they will expire soon. But what they mean is, if I just scroll down a little here, that my Windows 10 version 1507, it will drop out of support. So there will be no more updates available for those machines. If I try to call Microsoft, they will probably say, you should upgrade and call us back. So you wanna stay current. You don't have to upgrade to, you don't have to upgrade to the next Windows 10 version as soon as it's released. You have time to test, and time to test is where your servicing plans come in. So you can see here, I've created a couple of servicing plans. I have one called Business Release plus 10 days. So what I mean here is that when Windows 10 goes current branch for business, I will start test it in my environment. So 10 days after, I'll start deploying Windows 10 to this specific collection. And then, 30 days after, I will do it to that collection. So I'm in complete control. Or at least I thought I would be. Creating a servicing plan is very simple. So you just go in and you select yourself a target collection. So here, I'll just go in and select a collection with Mac clients. See how that goes. So this is really what we want. So you can see here it says release ready. That is current branch. That is right after it comes out of your insider preview when they release it. It's not really current branch for business, so it's not mature yet. There still could be some bug fixes. You probably don't want to release it in your environment. But I might be testing this. The current branch, who controls that date? Who controls when Windows 10 is going current branch? I can tell you who's not. I'm not. None in my organization is controlling that. So the thing is, if I create these servicing plans, what it will do is, it will start, let me just move on to the next one. It will start downloading the updates. So Windows 10 here is an update. It's just in a specific category called an upgrade. But you can see in here I have 0 updates, which is kind of funny because it has been release ready for at least 70 days. But what Microsoft is doing, when you look at the Windows 10 updates in here, and this is why it's not working, what they're doing is they are re-releasing the Windows 10 update once in a while. So they released it in November. So just November, the release date is day 0. So in my servicing plans, I had day 10 days after release. I want to start deploying this. But then, and I like Microsoft, but in all their wisdom, they re-released it in February. So now that's the new day 0. So now I have been testing maybe, 5 deployments, 5 different collections. And now I get my update is expired. Can you deploy an expired upgrade? Nope. So now I get a new version of Windows 10, even though it's still 15.11. It's a new version. So all of my servicing plans, they're just, down the drain. Because now I'm back at day 0 again. I might have tested, let's say, 500 machines in my environment, but that was with the old version of Windows 10 15.11. Am I allowed to just carry on testing with the new version? Nope, not in a real organization. You will have to go all the way back again and then start. And then once you're done, testing all of those machines once again, they will probably expire the upgrade once more. They have done this twice. They just expired the upgrade or re-released the upgrade in April. And I kind of understand why they do that, because they inject the security updates into the build. but that doesn't work for me as an enterprise IT pro here. So I can't really do this. I can't use this because I have to reship the new upgrade and an additional 3 gigabytes to 85 distribution points. So it's a big, big no-go. So that's why I'm like, it's a nice try, but seriously, it doesn't really scale. So for modern devices, and I know more and more in Scandinavia are starting to look into the enterprise mobility suite. Done a lot of those projects, and right now, today, actually, at TrueSec, we're running another EMS class. So it's really growing. A year ago, we would have talked about this is how you can do it, but now we have a lot of experience because now a lot of companies are actually doing this. And what I'm talking about is enrolling and managing your iOS and your Windows phones and your Android devices. That's in theory, because in the real world, no one is using Windows phones. That's what I've learned. You might walk into a company, they have 100 phones or 100 Windows phones, but that's about it. They're not really using them. Android, I have an Android myself. Managing Android phones, that's the biggest nightmare in SCCM and Intune history, because what is an Android? You have Knox-enabled devices. Those are good. With a Knox-enabled device, you can go in and do almost the same as you can do with an iOS device. But if you are, like, for instance, a bring your own device organization, and you believe you can get complete control of those devices, you better forget that, because a lot of the Android versions, they don't support stuff like conditional access. And conditional access is me saying, I will only grant you access to SharePoint, to email, other company resources, if your device is encrypted, if it's enrolled into Intune, and so on and so forth. But a lot of those things don't work with some of the cheaper Android models. We have kind of learned that the hard way. Some of the new modern device management features we have in here is the features will be released almost as quickly to SCCM as they will be to Intune. So those of you who have been looking into, should I select Intune as the platform or SCCM as the platform, you don't really have to look at the release cadence anymore, because with the new servicing model we have in SCCM, I mean, they can release updates like this. You don't have to download the update. The update will just be available in your console the next time you log on to the console. They will even give you a notice saying, hey, we have a new update available. So modern device management, when you select your platform, it should be more about, do you want to use PowerShell? Yeah. Do you want to have all of your device information in the same database? Yeah. Because when you have that in the same database, you can create custom reports and so on and so forth. And when you answer yes to those questions, the real MDM platform is SCCM. In 1605, we can get integration with the Apple VPP program, the volume purchasing program. You can also do that in 1602. But in 1605, you can also create an integration into the Windows Store. And that is going to be an interesting story for, I would say, at least for the next 12 months, because you want to integrate into the Windows Store when you're doing your Windows 10 projects. You want to have, a lot of our customers, they want to have a shopping experience. So they want to allow the Windows 10 users to access a store. It should be a custom store with only those apps that we have made available. And that requires some Windows Store integration, which is kind of interesting. For Windows 10, Windows 10 management is really the reason why you want to move into SCCM current branch. Besides, it's always cool to have the latest and the greatest. We do support all Windows 10 versions, not counting Home Edition, because we don't want to talk about those. But we do support here long-term servicing branch, current branch for business, even your insider previews. I mean, I have insider previews running in my environment. One way of easily testing, if you have that, would be to go into your Windows 10 servicing. So now I'm in my technical preview environment here. And you can see I have some Windows 10 versions. I have, again, 1507, 1511, and some other ones. And those other ones are insider preview builds. So they don't, they don't want to have a donut with 250 different versions. That wouldn't look nice, so they just call them other ones, which is kind of okay. When we talk Windows 10 management, we are talking multiple roles. So for instance, when we talk security and Windows 10 security, I'm not sure if you can see that, but you will see Windows 10 security here. We have something called the Windows Defender ATP. I'm going to talk to you a little about that because I'm pretty sure the majority of you have not seen it. It's just released in kind of a technical preview. This is the service here is built into Windows 10 Redstone. And those of you who have been working with ATA or have been joining some of Hassan and Markus's security classes, you know about Mimikatz and all of the security threats out there. What we can do with Windows Defender ATA or ATP here is that we can collect all of that information. That will be built in as a service in the upcoming Windows 10 release, as I said. You'll need a security guy here to go in and analyze the data. But the whole idea here is that I can go in and analyze the security breaches that we have had. So for instance, if someone sends me a mail, and I'm not a smart guy, if there is an attachment, it has my name, it says, hey, you just won $1 million, I'm clicking that attachment, right? Because I won $1 million. But what's going on right now in the background, you all know that. I mean, you might have an executable doing some nasty stuff, and all of a sudden my machine is now in someone else's possession. We can use the Windows Defender ATP to analyze what actually went on. But as an SCCM administrator, the IT pro, and I told you there are two roles in here. There's the security guy, and there is me as the SCCM administrator. I just want to make sure that the Defender ATP service is running, that my machines has been onboarded. That's my responsibility. My responsibility is not to analyze all the security stuff, because I don't understand that. And the same over here with all the secure guard and app logger, device guard, and Defender, all of that. I just want to make sure that this is enabled. Because if it's not enabled, then we need to do something about it. And that's where SCCM comes into play here. So with SCCM, if I just go back into my server, you will see when I go down here to the monitoring node, I have my Windows Defender ATP status. So I've onboarded a single machine in my environment to the Windows Defender ATP service. You cannot go home and do that. First off, you need to sign up for the program. They will need to approve you. Right now it's kind of an insider preview program. And you will also need the latest version of Windows 10 Insider Preview, because it's built into that one. So what this is telling me is that I have 50% of my machines, it's just one, but still 50%, are healthy, which is good. And I can see in here how many devices I have who actually have this one enrolled. If I go to my health attestation, I don't have any health attestation data in this environment, but this one is also working in, this is also working in 1604. So if I go into my other demo environment, which is, 1602, then you can see in here that I have some machines that are compliant, machines that are not compliant. I have some errors in here, and I can drill in and see those machines, and then I just need to take action and figure out, so why are you not using BitLocker, why are you not using UEFI and all of that. Setting this up is kind of easy. Let me just go back to the demo environment, so don't mess up anything. It's just a client setting. So when I go into my default client settings in here and take a look at my user settings or my device settings here, you'll see I can enable health attestation here. And for those of you who don't know what health attestation is, I'm pretty sure, again, that Johan Arwidmark is going to talk about that. In 1605, I can use an on-premise health attestation server. It requires server 2016. So once server 2016 is released, you probably want to get your site server to that specific release, and an in-place upgrade is absolutely supported. Right now in 1602, you need to have an Intune connector because your devices will be communicating with Intune and get the information back that way. Cool. One other thing here. So as I told you, the Windows Defender Security Center, so there is a dashboard in here, and I onboarded one of my machines yesterday. So if I go in here and look at my machine view, you'll see I have a couple of machines. This machine here is the one I onboarded yesterday. So as the security guy, I can go in and I can have a look at this specific machine and see what we actually had running. And the machine I onboarded yesterday, pretty boring. But the other machine here, kind of interesting, because we had a backdoor. Someone was stupid enough to click that mail attachment. And what we can do right now is we can go in and read about what actually happened. So we figured out that we had something called NeuroBlaze was detected, and you can read information about that. You can also, if I go back here on the right machine, just scroll down a little, I can see the history. So what actually ran, and when we ran that specific stuff here, how many machines were affected? Did this specific backdoor here, did that communicate with, external IP addresses and so on and so forth? So you can see all of this along with the timeline, which is kind of nice. So here you go. So I had PowerShell created something. So there is a key generator generated by my PowerShell, and I can see down here that it ended up with a SVC host. So this is kind of super interesting. As an SCCM administrator, I couldn't care less. I don't care about this. I might care about this, but it's not really my responsibility. It's the responsibility of the IT security team. So they will have this dashboard, and this is a cloud service only. There will be no on-prem, cloud service only. If you want on-prem stuff like this, get Microsoft Enterprise Mobility Suite and ATA, the Advanced Threat Analytics. There you will have your on-prem stuff. So there are two things in here. There is the dashboard, as I mentioned, in SCCM. It will just tell me if everything is good. And then there is the other service. Another thing I have is enterprise data protection. And enterprise data protection already works today in 1602, although it still requires Redstone. Enterprise data protection is kind of interesting. It's a compliance item. So I have to go in here and look at my configuration item. I have to go in here and look at my configuration items in here. Here you go. I have one CI that will manage Excel. What does it mean that it will manage Excel? It means that me as the administrator, I will go in and create several rules in here. And when I create those rules, I can say, when you're working with Excel, what do I want to do with the data that you have working, the company data? Do I want to allow you to copy those data, to an external source like a USB drive, or maybe you want to copy it to, your own private mail or something like that? that we can kind of do today with managed applications in EMS. But in here, I can go in and specify, well, the user can do that, but we will prompt them and say, hey, dude, we know what you're doing. So maybe you shouldn't be doing this. We can also just monitor it without us telling them anything. And then the smart part. This really depends on where you are. So I did a project for a company where they have a research facility. And I kid you not, when you walked around in that research facility, you would have to have a guard with you, because then he or she could see that you're not doing anything you're not supposed to do. Those data there, they cannot leave those premises. They would be a perfect match for something like enterprise data protection. So what you do is you specify your applications that you want to manage, and then you can go in and specify your network rules. So when do these rules here come into play? And that can be an IP range, it can be a cloud domain, it can be your on-premise domain. You can go in and specify multiple. And then you can also integrate this with Azure Rights Management. So Azure, those of you who are working with Azure Rights Management, you know Azure Rights Management will encrypt the data that you're working with, and that encryption will stay with the data. So if I try to send something to Johan and Johan doesn't have the key, no matter what he do, he could buy me a beer and then I would give him the key. But besides that, no matter what he does, he won't be able to decrypt that specific document. So that's not the same as NTFS permissions, because NTFS permissions, they only count, when you're on premise. So a ton of super interesting things coming our way. The winner, because this is a top 6 list, the winner is it's not a feature. The winner is you, because as I started saying, the SCCM team has changed. They have changed a lot. So they are actually now, they are listening. They're not only listening, to themselves, they're actually also listening to you. So a lot of the features we see in the project comes from 2 sources. They come from user voice. If you do not know what user voice is, I highly encourage you to jump into user voice. User voice is where everyone can contribute. Maybe you don't have any, new and great ideas. That's perfectly okay. But what you should do, at least, is go in and have a look at some of the other ideas. And then when you see some great ideas, go in and use your vote. Cast your vote in here. And they're taking this seriously. You can see here, for this one, daisy chain task sequences. That one is already planned. That one there is noted. So they go in and constantly update these. And I know for a fact that they spend a ton of times on the user voice here. So that would be one of them. The other one is the hackathons. So last year, they started inviting external people to hackathons. A hackathon, when we talk Microsoft, is a week where the developers can do whatever they want to do. They have to, stay on campus and do some kind of work. But besides that, they can come up with crazy ideas, and they can test those ideas. And then at the end of the week, all their colleagues will go in and say, okay, that idea is super great. Let's work on that and get it into the product. Starting from last year, November, they invited other people in there. So we attended the hackathon last year, and it was a fantastic week. And 4 or 5 of the ideas that we came up with actually made it into the product. And one of them is in 1602. So if I go in and look at my clients here, you can see the icons. So this is actually a hackathon idea. Green means the client is online. Red, not really online. So that's just one of the ideas. And they cannot think about, everything themselves. So they need some inspiration. And inspiration they get from user voice, and they get them from the hackathons. A couple of weeks ago, we had the first hackathon outside of Microsoft. So there was this conference called the Midwest Management Summit, where Microsoft they came with one team on site of developers, and then they had a team working in Redmond, and all the attendees could submit ideas. And some of those ideas will make it into the product. I now sense that my 60 minutes of fame is gone. I have someone standing behind me. So this is all I had for you. And yeah, thanks for listening to me, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Tack så mycket, Kent, för en spännande